Good afternoon. The joint committees on the Committee on Water and Land and the Committee on Agriculture and Environment is going into its hearing notice on Friday, January 28, 2022. And we also welcome our committee members who are on Zoom as well as present here. And for the Senate, Chair would like to recognize Senator Revere, who's here in present, as well as Senator Misalucha will be heading down here as well. And on Zoom, we do have my committee chair, Keith Agaran from Maui, and Senator Favela. Senator Gabbard, your introduction.
Yes, and for myself, as I chair the Agriculture Environment Committee, Vice Chair is Senator Clarence Nishihara, and also Senator Ocasio, Senator Rhodes, and Senator Favela. I don't see him here, but will be along shortly.
Thank you. Yeah, this meeting to continue does include the audio and the video of remote participants is being streamed live on YouTube, and you will find the links to viewing options for all Senate meetings on the live and on-demand video page of the legislature's website and on the link posted on the hearing notice. In the unlikely event that we have to abruptly end this hearing due to technical difficulties, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business at 1 p.m. on Monday, January 31st in this room and on Zoom. A public notice will be posted on the legislature's website. For the testifiers participating remotely, your audio will be muted and video disabled until shortly before it is your turn to testify. The time limit per testifier is 2 minutes, and you will hear the sound of the bells. And so your time will be up. I'll be reading a list of those who have submitted written testimony for each measure. We apologize if the closed captioning doesn't accurately transcribe the names as well. And if you're interested in reviewing the written testimony, please go to the legislature's website and you will find the link on the status page for the measure. Okay, Chair would like to recognize the presence of Senator Misalucha on the Water and Land Committee. Okay. Proceeding with the joint hearing on SB 2056 relating to soil classifications. And this requires the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development to conduct a study of the suitability of the state's current soil overall productivity and rating system classified by the Land Study Bureau's detailed land classification. And this also includes a report to the legislature and appropriates funds. Testifying today, we do have 3 members, and we do have the presence of Dean Comerford from the University of Hawaii. Welcome, aloha, Dean. Good to see you.
Aloha, Chair. Nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation. We in Manoa, we stand on the written testimony in strong support of the operation, and we are here for any questions if necessary.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Cameron Black, and he's testifying for the office of the State Office of Energy.
Good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs. We stand on our written testimony in support. Sorry, I didn't start my video in time for that.
Okay, you've got time if you want to add.
No, that's the end of our testimony. I just couldn't show my face.
Thanks, Cameron.
Thank
you. Yeah, yes, we can hear you. Testifying for the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development, Mary Alice Evans. Aloha, Mary Alice. Happy New Year.
Aloha chairs, Inouye and Gabbard, vice chairs Keith Agaran and Nishihara. The Office of Planning and Sustainable Development strongly supports this measure. And if it's the legislature's intent to pass the measure, we look forward to working with the Department of Agriculture, the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources, the Land Use Commission, and the USDA. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Members, we do have total supporting this measure is 4, no opposition, and 1 with comments. And Chair would like to recognize anyone who wants to question anybody, members from Waterland. Senator Gabbard.
Thank you, Chair. A question for Mary Alice with OPSD. Can you give us ballpark figures in terms of estimated budget? What's the study going to cost?
Senator Gabbard, I don't have an estimate, but we can get that to you in writing within, I think, possibly by Monday or Tuesday next week, if that would be satisfactory.
That's great. Thank you very much, Mary Alice. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mary Alice. If you can send the answer to both committee chairs so they can get it expeditiously. And Chair, just do want to recognize that Department of Ag did send testimony, but has not requested to make comments to speak on this measure, and they support this measure as well. Senator Gabbard, any of your members wants to ask questions of our testifiers?
Speak right up. Don't see any. We're all good. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Gabbard, I think it's a request that's coming forth from myself as well. Why don't we take a short recess, take a vote on this, because we do have the next measure so we can get it out of the way. Then those testifiers don't have to stay on and linger to wait until we hear the other measures. Is that all right?
That's fine.
We can go into a recess then. Members, any questions to that? Good idea. Okay, IT, can you let us go into recess? Thank you. The committees on Water and Land and the Committee on Agriculture and Environment is back into session now on Senate Bill 2056. And members, both chairs have agreed that this measure is long overdue as well on soil classification systems. And we appreciate the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development to make sure that these measures are looked at seriously in the statutes, as well as their focus on the soil classification study. So Chair's recommendation is to pass this measure, pass SB 2056 as is. And for the Committee on Water and Land, Senator Misolucha, will you take the votes, please?
Certainly. So Committee on Water and Land,
Chair goes aye.
Chair votes aye. Vice Chair?
Aye.
Senator Misolucha votes aye. Senator Rivera?
Aye.
Senator Favela is excused. Chair, your recommendation's adopted.
Okay, thank you. Senator Gabbard. Senator Gabbard, your votes?
Yeah. Same, yeah. Follow the recommendation of Water Land Chair. I vote aye. Vice Chair Nishihara, if you two.
Aye. Aye.
Vice Chair, would you take the rest of the vote of the members?
Okay. Senator Ocasio,
Aye.
Senator Rhodes,
Aye.
Senator Favela. Motion's adopted.
Thank you, members.
Thank you. For SB 2068, Chair Gabbard, does your members want to do a short recess so they can look at the testimonies as requested earlier? Can you poll your members?
Members, are we okay, or you like a recess?
I'm ready to go
I'm
whenever you
ready.
guys are.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
I just find it a little bit disingenuous in some ways to have this many testimonies on such an important topic only come in 5 minutes before the hearing.
Okay, thank you for your comments,
Yeah.
Senator.
I'll
Ocasio.
let the public know.
With regards to SB 2068, and this is to continue the joint hearing on Committee on Water and Land and the Committee on Agriculture and the Environment, SB 2068 relating to land management. This repeals the board approval requirements for transfers of certain public lands classified for agriculture use by the Department of Land and Natural Resources to the Department of Agriculture. This requires the Department of Agriculture to accept the transfer of and manage certain qualifying non-conservation, non-agricultural park lands. This also requires the Department of Agriculture, prior to offering a lease, to inquire with the Department of Land and Natural Resources regarding any easements required for access to landlocked forest reserves or other assets on the land subject to the lease, requires BLNR to amend and extend certain leases for the lease to qualify for certain financing. It also authorizes the BLNR to amend and extend existing pasture leases and to issue new pasture leases by negotiation in furtherance of public purposes that the Department of LNR and the Department of Agriculture are responsible for promoting, requires the Division of Forestry and Wildlife to seek approval from the Board of Land and Natural Resources before removing pasture lands for reforestation. It also requires the Division of Forestry and Wildlife to submit a funded action plan for reforestation on current pasture lands. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 who has sent testimonies to speak. And the chair at this time would like to call Nicole Galassi testifying for the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council.
Thank you, Chair Inouye. Thank you, Chair Gabbard, Vice Chairs and members of the committees. My name is Nicole Galassi. I'm the Managing Director for the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. We stand on our written testimony in support of the intent of this bill, but in order for it to be effective, there are some clarifications that need to be made in order to clarify some of the vague language. I want to also thank the Act 90 Working Group for putting so much effort into the intent to facilitate these land transfers. We recognize that they're trying to facilitate collaboration between DLNR and DOA. But we also think that can happen. It can definitely happen. We can have confidence that that collaboration can happen when the lands are transferred to DOA. Watershed protection, habitat conservation, public recreation, these are all needs that need to be met, and they can be met best by transferring the leases to DOA and giving the ranchers the lease terms that they need. We also understand that there are multiple goals that the state needs to meet, but the talk of removing lands from pasture for reforestation is most concerning to us. Once again, I think we can reach conservation goals without putting ranchers out of business. And to do that, we would reforest areas that are not in active agriculture. I'm not sure why we're looking at considering taking agricultural lands out of production when there's tons of other areas that can be cleaned up, that can be worked on. If we want to get onto that path of increasing our food production, we can't be taking lands out of agricultural production. And we say this over and over again, but it's because we need to be cognizant of it. These leaseholders have been waiting for now 19 years to be transferred to DOA. All this time, they haven't been able to plan for the long term. But all the while, the mechanism has been there to help them do this, and that's transferring them over to DOA because DOA is equipped to support them for agricultural production and food production. So I just want to remind folks of that. It's been 19 years, and I hope that this bill can help us to find a good path forward. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify. Mahalo.
Okay. Thank you, Nicole. Brian Miyamoto from the Hawai'i Farm Bureau.
Good afternoon, Chair Inouye, Chair Gabbard, Vice Chairs Nishihara, Vice Chair Dogron, and members of the committees. My name is Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawai'i Farm Bureau. Maybe a little late, but I have not seen many of you, so Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
The agriculture community really appreciates, we do support the intent of this measure with some requested amendments. The agriculture community appreciates the working group's review and efforts on this critical issue for Hawaii's continued food production. Chair, we appreciate you and Chair Tarnas and all the members of your working group for the amount of work and all the hearings that you held. So we do really appreciate that. And we do appreciate that this bill is a good step forward. We understand there are other bills, and again, the support is very appreciated. We saw in the pandemic the importance of agriculture, and we believe this bill is a good step forward. The Farm Bureau also appreciates the efforts that have been made thus far to accomplish the transfers and respectfully requests some amendments that we agree with the cattlemen will further clarify and facilitate the intent that the state lands in agricultural use to include pasture will be transferred from DLNR to DOA. I don't want to repeat many of the things that the previous speaker and the cattlemen said. I think we've come before this body many times. We support DLNR's mission, but we don't believe that, well, we believe that DOA are better land managers, are the more appropriate agency for these agricultural lands. So the Farm Bureau stands ready to work with this legislative body. Again, we appreciate the efforts, we appreciate the input, we appreciate the time that the working group put forward, and we do stand in support of the intent of this measure with proposed amendments. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. And members, we will be able to ask questions after the few that we have will be testifying. Wayne Tanaka?
Chair.
Yes.
Could we have IT put up the timer clock on the screen so the speakers are aware of their time?
Okay, thank you, IT, have you gotten that info? The request? Okay, we hope he did. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Wayne Tanaka, Sierra Club of Hawaii, in opposition. Okay, Wayne, are you there? Okay, we have communication from them in opposition as, let's see, Maurice Atta, Department of Agriculture.
Good afternoon, chairs and
Good afternoon.
committee members. Similar to the prior speakers, the department is really appreciative of the efforts of the Act 90 working group. And there are elements of this bill that are definite positive steps towards facilitating those transfers. But we do have some important concerns that we think would merit considering some amendments. And the basic concerns that we have are in three areas of the bill. First, it appears that the bill eliminates the discretion of the Department of Agriculture to determine, the nature or the methodology and how, I guess, properties would be selected prior to the transfer. And this was achieved through the mutual approvals of the boards and then the discretion of the department to set the terms of the transfer. This is related somewhat to the second concern, which I outlined in our testimony regarding the mandatory acceptance of transfers subject to qualifying conditions. We believe the term qualifying needs clarification to make sure that it covers all of the concerns that are associated with transfers. And somewhat tied to the first concern, agricultural lands have historically been the default classification for all public land, all lands where the lands did not clearly fall into the other categories or classifications. And as a result, classified as agriculture, you'll find lands that can constitute natural hazards or land features which are not typically associated with agriculture, like streams, cliff sides, other sorts of hazards that can be located in natural environments as well as in improved areas, which still fall into the agricultural classification as a unfortunate or unintended consequence of the default agriculture classification. Because of that, we had a due diligence process to review those types of issues, and as well as the operational concerns about size of property, access, water, soil conditions, and all of that. And those are all factored into our due diligence reviews. So we are concerned that if we don't have the opportunity to review and comment on those items and have that as a basis for not accepting, that we could unfortunately be managing lands that really are not suitable for agriculture. The third concern, which is an important concern, is the repeal of section 166E6, which is our section that gives us the Department of Agriculture authority to adopt rules. And apparently our rules in that section actually cover the implementation of our program for the entire chapter. And we have been advised that it could seriously handicap our ability to operate the program without the authority provided in those rules. So if the concern is that there are certain elements of that section that need to be amended, we would recommend specifically amending or proposing amendments to those items. And we would be more than happy to participate and assist in that.
Morris, since you're on, and I think it's important to note that this bill affects you as well. So I'm going to ask you a question with regards to your comments. Since you only have the one page that was sent to the committee, your discussions and your comments are pretty important to this measure, and we don't see this in your testimony. So let's allow you to send another comment letter to the committee, please.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, because it's not noted here. And so we want to make sure as we work on this measure that we have what you just indicated in your comments. And I think that's important for us to consider that as well.
Of course, yeah, we'll make sure we get that over to you as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, Peter Simmons in opposition. Peter, are you on? Okay, I understand he is not going to be speaking. Ulupono Initiative, Micah Munikata.
Good afternoon, Chair Noy. Nice to see you folks on Zoom and Happy New Year.
Yes.
Hope you folks are
Likewise.
doing well and looking forward to working with you folks this session. Micah Munikata here on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. We offer comments on this measure. A couple of things that we want to just highlight is that first off, we appreciate the work of both Chair Noy and Chair Tarnas over the interim with the Act 90 group, really trying to help facilitate some legislative proposals to really deal with this long-standing issue. So really appreciate the work that was gone into it. Do want to mention that we are supportive of what the bill tries to, or attempts to do regarding streamlining the transfer of ag leases to the Department of Ag, and really the collaboration between the two departments. We are also supportive of language that requires DOFA's funded action plan when seeking to remove lands out of pastoral use and into reforestation. Those items seem to be moving the needle in the right direction, we feel. However, we do still believe that the DOA's structure of affordable long-term leases for ranchers can immediately provide a positive impact to our local food production and really support our local ranching industry today. You know, there's been a lot of talk over the past 2 years with the pandemic, natural disasters, everything we've kind of gone through as the state around our need to improve food security and really support the community at hand. And really one of the major themes that comes out is that the time to act around food security is now. You know, if we're looking to sort of recreate the wheel within a lease structure within DONR, you're really kicking the can down the road for these ranchers that are looking to take advantage of a lease structure where important investments can be made into operations to directly support the state's food security and sustainable goals. So really, we really hope that this committee and really the legislature can consider the current structure at hand to not really delay any kind of implementation around that. As other testifiers have sort of mentioned previously, there are some vague language comments that we recognize in our testimony, hoping that we can build upon regarding some transparency and clarity. I won't list them, they're in our written testimony. We do appreciate the opportunity to testify before you, chairs, and if there's anything we can do to help, please let us know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that's the end of those that agreed to testify as well. Chairs would like to note that we did receive 8 testimonies in support, 10 in opposition, and 3 with comments. And the chairs would entertain questions if you have at this time. Waterland, any questions? Otherwise, Senator Gabbard.
AEN members, any questions?
Yeah, I was looking at the comments from DLNR. They were quite critical, so were any of that addressed?
Okay, let's see, we did have the comments and I'd like to add, is any of the DLNR staff, any of the agencies represented? You have not indicated that you would be speaking. We did receive testimonies, members from Kevin Moore, Ian Hirokawa, Emma Ewan, David Smith. That's it. Any of the DLNR folks available at this time would like to add comments?
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon, chairs, vice chairs, committee members. Kevin Moore with DLNR.
Thank you, Kevin.
Hi there. So yeah, we submitted testimony, written testimony in which we oppose this measure in part and we support it in part. And the parts that we oppose are the requirement that agricultural lands automatically be transferred from DLNR to DOA. And the Act 90 working group, which a lot of the testifiers have alluded to in their work in the interim, found that DLNR should retain management of multi-purpose agricultural lands. And those are agricultural lands that have use use for both agricultural and natural resource protection type uses. We also oppose the proposed amendment of HRS section 17136B that would eliminate BLNR's discretion to extend leases by changing may to shall. So basically every lease application that comes to the board would have to be extended, and that's not just for agricultural leases. That section applies to our commercial and industrial leases as well. So we think it would be a real problem for us, for our board, not to have the discretion to look at each application on its merits and decide whether agricultural, commercial, and industrial leases should be extended. We do support the portions of the bill that give the BLNR the authority to amend existing pasture leases to factor stewardship services by the lessee into an appropriate rent, and a rent discount probably, and a similar section that allows the board to issue new leases for pasture use by direct negotiation, also factoring in stewardship services to determine an appropriate rent. So we have other staff here available for questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for responding, Kevin. Any other DLNR members or from the agencies present? Okay, hearing none. Senator Gabbard, any members has questions? We see Senator Ocasio.
This question is for Department of Agriculture. So if Morris Pata is still here. Unless I misunderstood the oral testimony from Cattlemen's Council, they did mention that it seemed like they mentioned that Department of Agriculture is equipped for this kind of transfer. Can you share with that a little bit more about how you're equipped and if this is indeed the case?
I believe the reference to the that we're better equipped to manage the I guess the pasture leases and ranching operations in general is more based on the understanding that we have the technical expertise and the experience in managing those types of operations as well as other agricultural type operations. We have these the support resources for the industry. We our staff are very familiar with practices as well as advice, and that facilitates better operations. Also, I think the reference is also to the fact that our land management and leasing practicing methods that are available to us tend to be, perceived as being more friendly to ranching operations and agriculture operations. And so that's where I believe that comment is coming from. And basically that there is an element of, I guess, comfort and trust in dealing with ranchers and farmers because of who we are.
Okay, so in that light, what more would you need to actually implement, and what part is lacking then in terms of that being equipped?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, obviously it's a primary area of lack of sufficient resources because there's a lot of need out there. And we are constantly challenged by that. Our department is, operating pretty much bare bones because we have minimal staff, and the need for support is fairly great. So, if anything, that's where I would suggest possibly looking to assist us.
Yeah. Okay. Another question too then is, we're talking about active food production. I know there was a lot of, in many of the testimony was about, local food self-reliance and food security and such. But what percentage of the leases that we're talking about for this transfer are actually in active production of locally consumed food?
I can't I don't have that statistic on me right now, but we can definitely provide you with it. There's multiple ongoing effort to come up with the data and statistics to establish, and provide information for informed decision making, specifically, relating to what you're asking. And I can get back that information to you and the committees as soon as possible.
Yeah, that'd be great, because it seems like if that's a really strong argument for many people in favor of this kind of transfer, it seems like that would be really important information to have, because what I'm aware of is things that are being exported, not even for food, but actually, as offspring and such. And so to take that into consideration, but yet to use the argument of food security seems a little bit disingenuous to some degree. So unless, of course, we have evidence that it's actually being used for food security, not if in a possibility of a doomsday event, but in actuality. So yeah, thank you for that. I guess that same, thank you for answering that. I just have basically that same question then to Micah Munakata, if you're available, because you did specifically bring that up as well. I mean, many folks did in their testimony, but what's your feedback on that as far as the actual lands that we're talking about for transfer that are currently aiding in that food security, and that where food is actually being produced by these ranch lands for local consumption?
Senator, is your question to
Micah.
Ulupono?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator, for the question. It's a great question, really. From Ulupono's standpoint, local food production for local consumption is high priority. However, we do have, the understanding that agricultural operations here within the state work on such tight margins, and that there is a need for diversifying one's operations to include both export and local consumption in that sense. With that being said, the specifics behind some of these lease transfers over to the DOA, I think what we're finding is some of those specifics, hopefully DOA can provide, but from our perspective, if you're able to incentivize a lease to be cheaper and really more favorable long-term, and do it now for a ranching industry or a ranching operation, there's ways in which a ranching operation can adjust to meet local market demand. So I think that there's a lot more flexibility that would come with that, a lot more decisions to be made from an economic standpoint, from a business standpoint, on what you can bring to the local market. So really, it's just starting with the base. And we believe that the lease structure is number one. It really allows an operation to make those investments in order to meet the demand of, say, a local economy here. So although maybe not all of these leases are directly supporting food production for local consumption, it's not to say that they can't. The potential is there. That's what we think.
Yeah, I guess a couple of things are concerning about that then is and this will lead to my next question, is that we don't have an inventory of this kind of data, but yet, much of the testimony is based upon that. And then the other piece is, just to be direct, on our island, on Hawaii Island, we have for export, and I understand the need for diversity to satisfy, economically a local market and export market, but the export is not food production either. So, and then even with that kind of ranching, we don't even have data apparently for the kind of quantity that's being used for local production. So this is all then an assumption that this is where we're going, rather than what's actually happening. Is that your understanding?
Well, I think a lot of what we base is probably more related to industry as a whole, and I would defer a lot to the Cattlemen's Council, who we work closely with as part of our local food coalition group. So maybe on those specifics, I defer to the industry. But Senator, I did want to mention, like, you know, when it does come to some of these decisions from an operational standpoint, it does come down to economics and a business mentality. There's other aspects that are very difficult to increase our local consumption here within the state, and a lot of it deals with our infrastructure to really, you know, post-harvest regarding those facilities here within the state, and we don't have those facilities to really meet that local throughput in order to provide this meat here within state and keep it all here. Really, at some point, some of it's going to have to go someplace, and a lot of it tends to go to the mainland, and then sometimes it comes back. So it's a little bit of a funky industry, but I do want to say that, like, the cattlemen can probably highlight that a little bit more for you as far as the process goes. But there are some challenges that do exist regarding the slaughter and keeping local meat here within the state. But we do feel that in order for people to really make those investments, even putting slaughter facilities on their own lands, maybe a vertical integration, they're going to need some kind of base. And that's where we feel a lease structure really starts.
Nicole, Senator Ocasio, let's see if industry would like to respond. Nicole, do you have anything you'd like to add to that? And then Senator Revere has a question as well later for Department of Ag.
Thanks, Chair Noy. Thanks, Senator Ocasio. Micah, you did a really good job of explaining the need for that diversification in business. But I want to make the point that your question, Senator Ocasio, the numbers, I don't have them for you right now, so there is a need to track that a little bit better. But I can positively say that every rancher, whether they're cow-calf or keep 100% of their cattle here for local food production, every single one of them contribute to the local food. That's because even cow-calf operators contribute through their cull bulls and cull cows, which do go into especially getting those things like ground beef or stew meat for things like farm to school. Micah touched on the need for the infrastructure though. That's kind of why we're at a really, really important time right now, because there has historically been this lack of capacity for getting cattle to the processing facilities, getting capacity there. Now we're at a point where we're expecting that capacity to increase. We've seen it happening slowly, and we expect there to be more opportunities for our cattlemen to get their cattle processed here for local food consumption if they choose to do that as part of their business models. But like Micah said, it really comes down to if they have the confidence in their leases to be able to make that switch. It's not just a matter of it happening overnight. It takes a couple of years to make that switch, and it's going to happen slowly. So I also want to point out that with the cow-calf operation, that is cattlemen exporting calves, but other agricultural industries also export. So thank you so much for that question. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. That's it, Senator Ocasio? Senator Revere then.
For now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Senator Revere.
Great, thanks. For Department of Agriculture, please, Morris.
Morris, Department of Ag, are you still on?
Yes, I am. I was just waiting for IT to allow me to come back on.
Yeah, thanks, Morris.
Great, thank you. This is a complex issue, we all agree, and I think everybody's working to try to get to a workable solution. What I haven't seen or heard, and maybe it's there and I've just missed it, but have you identified and put down a list of priority properties that the Department of Agriculture is ready to take within this year or the next couple of years? Is there a priority list from you? Because all or nothing doesn't seem to work for all the reasons everybody's described, but are there some that we can start to transition? If I don't think the legislature should be in the position right here of forcing something to go, but since nothing is happening and there's a continuing problem, here we are.
Yes.
So what is your answer for that? I mean, what properties do you want? And has that been clarified? And can you share that with us?
Yes, I'm glad. Thank you for the question. Just as a point of clarification, there has been an ongoing process of working with between DLNR and DOA to come up with mutual lists and mutual review to come up with lists of potential properties for transfer. And we have been prioritizing those that we felt could easily be transferred for a lack of any issues that are pending. So we have been over the last several years working on those lists. We've moved through primarily Oahu, Kauai, Maui, and really the bulk of what remains is primarily lands on the Big Island, which is of course the single largest source of ag lands in the state. But we have been working together. We have had our discussions, and we've had our disagreements about which property should or should not be considered for whatever reasons. But that discussion has been an active, ongoing decision-making process. We have produced lists for each island, and we would need to confer with DLNR, but I'm guessing that we could probably share our lists that we have been reviewing based on what both agencies believe are acceptable, mutually acceptable conditions that exist on those properties. I don't have the numbers for you, but I believe for the Big Island, there's an active list that we are reviewing that includes approximately 50 properties on the Big Island. I believe we should be able to share that with you. I need to check on that.
Thank you. Chair, what I'm wondering is, let's identify some properties to go now. What's the lowest hanging fruit? Yes. And let's get started. Right. That would be my suggestion. Let's go. And then when we work through those quote easy ones, then we might learn something about moving on to the next ones.
Senator, sorry. I just wanted to thank you for that comment, because that is exactly the process that we have been using to try and move as many properties as possible to identify those, we use the exact same term, the low-hanging fruit, those targeted properties that don't appear to have any issues and are clearly agricultural. And so we have actually worked on those as a priority. And so thank you for that, for that comment, because we totally identify with that. We've been trying to implement that process.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Chair recognizes presence of Senator Favela and the hardworking guy, because he also represents his committee presence on waterland and agriculture. And members, we are into a time that we do have the next phase of our hearings. So Senator Gabbard, I see your hand up, but I just want to let us know that we need to close out on 2068 so that we can continue, but we'll come to that as well. Senator Gabbard.
Thank you, Chair. This actually came up, a really quick question is in Sierra Club's testimony, but I don't see, they weren't here for the, but I wanted to ask, directed to DLNR, and that is, are there known native and endangered species habitats that are located on these lands? Have there been studies of that, number one? And number two, what impact will these transfer of lands have on those habitats? Can you speak?
Hey, this is Emma Ewing. Can you folks hear me?
Yes, Great. We can, Emma.
Yeah, there is, start my video, okay. Yeah, there are many endangered species on these properties, and our testimony has actually included maps showing Hawai'i Island and the endangered species known on the properties that would be transferred by this bill. So that's definitely a huge concern for us, is the issues of making sure that DLNR, which has the expertise to protect these endangered species, as well as the public access, watershed forests, et cetera, are have the oversight over these leases. And just to follow up with Senator Revere, we actually have provided a story map, which is actually available publicly, and we've given it to the Act 90 working group that shows the lands that DLNR has transferred and also is willing to transfer to the Department of Ag. Exactly your question of where is the win-wins and the low-hanging fruit. And we can provide you that that link, but it is publicly available for folks to see, and we have shared it with our collaborators and anyone who's interested.
Okay,
you,
thank
Emma.
you. Continue.
Thank you,
Okay. Yes,
Just
continue,
quick-
Senator
thank
Revere.
you, Emma. Quick follow-up then. So does DLNR agree that there are a few properties that are considered low-hanging fruit and ready to transfer?
Oh yeah, there's definitely not just a few, a majority of them we have determined are we're fine with transferring, and we have that map.
Would you be able to then also share what you think are the low-hanging fruit, and then that would help us better understand from agriculture's view and from DLNR's view?
Yeah, we'll follow up with a memo with that list, and we can't speak for Department of Ag, but we'll share what we think is appropriate.
Perfect. Thank you both. Well,
Thank you. Yes, Senator Ocasio.
Thank you, Chair. So kind of as a follow-up to that, this is for Department of Agriculture. So you did mention that you feel equipped in some ways as far as agriculture, but in relating to this last question, how equipped are you to manage land with endangered species and watershed protection and all of these kuleana that normally the Department of Land and Natural Resources is entrusted to?
Thank you for the question, Senator. So our position has always been that the management of lands for those specific purposes always remains within the authority and jurisdiction of DLNR. As a department, we do not engage, other than some of the collaborative joint efforts that we are involved with the Hawaii invasive species councils and those types of invasive pests control types of activity that we get involved with regards to endangered species activities and conservation activities and reforestation activities. Those functions and management and administrative authority continues to remain with DLNR, whether or not we are managing the land for agricultural use. So whenever those types of activities or issues arise, we are always actively collaborating with DLNR, with the pertinent divisions and departments to handle those issues. So to your question, it's not that we actually are the managers for those types of land issues. Our position has always been, while the land is being managed for agricultural production use, it does not preclude any other government agency from carrying out the functions that they are empowered to do. And that's how we envision collaborating with DLNR on these matters.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks. As I did mention earlier, we do have the Committee on Agriculture and Environment has two other measures, I believe, that must continue within our time frame as well. So chairs recommend that we go into recess. IT, can you put us into recess so the decision making on SB 2068 can continue? Okay. Good afternoon. The Joint Committees on Water and Land and Agriculture and the Environment is out of recess and ready to make decisions on SB 2068. And the chairs would like to thank the committee members. There were good questions asked. We've heard from the comments as well as our discussion, so appreciate that as well. So the chair recommends that we defer decision-making on this measure so that I'll be working on this with staff actually this weekend, so starting tomorrow. And no different than the kinds of times that we did discussions and make sure things are right and the formation of Act 90. So having said that, both committees will asking for a decision-making to be deferred to Wednesday, February 2nd. Now there's two different time zones that I'll talk about. The Committee on Waterland will make decisions at 1:05 p.m. in Conference Room 229, and the Committee on AEN, on Agriculture and Environment, will be making decisions in room 1:15 p.m. in room 229. Having said that, okay, I think.
Chair.
Yes,
Chair.
Chair. Yes, Senator Gabbard.
For AEN, it'll be 1:15 p.m. in room 224.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you.
Stand corrected. Okay. Okay, we don't need to take action now. All right, Senator Gabbard, your show.
Okay. Let's see. Let me get here. Okay, so do I have to get the gavel in and all that stuff?
No, I think it's a continual, so you just have to go with the next item, and I guess that you're the lead, so.
Okay, okay. So I don't need to go into all the announcements and all that stuff.
It's a continual.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, we're starting off with SB 2062. Relating to environmental impact statements, exempts the proposed drilling, construction, or use of a well on lands leased from the Department of Agriculture from the requirements of the environmental impact statements law, provided that the land is being used to support agriculture and food production. And let's see here. First up, testimony will be Kaleo Manuel from DLNR. Is Kaleo here?
Yep, here, law chairs, vice chairs, and committee. Kaleo.
Cleo, before you get started, I would ask IT to put up a little timer clock so our speakers are aware of their time. 2 minutes. Nate, is Nate there? IT?
Hi, Senator. I'll let the committee know.
Thank you. Oh, proceed, Kaleo.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Kaleo Manuel, Deputy with the Water Commission. The department stands on its written testimony offering comments. And I have staff here, and we're here to answer questions if there are any from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaleo. Next is Ryan Imata from DLNR.
Yeah, Ryan Imata, Groundwater Regulation Branch. The similar stand by the comments submitted by the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Phyllis Shimabukuro Geyser from DOA.
I believe Phyllis had to leave for another hearing, but we'll, this is Morrisata, Deputy Director. We'll stand on our written testimony that was submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Morris. Wayne Tanaka from the Sierra Club.
Good afternoon, Chair Gabbard, Chair Inoue, members of the Agriculture and Environment and Water and Land Committee. Wayne Tanaka with the Sierra Club of Hawaii. We oppose this measure for the reasons described in our written testimony. Just wanted to add that there hasn't been a statutory exemption to our environmental review requirements in, I think, nearly 25 years. And I'd also just note that even the Department of Agriculture acknowledges in their written testimony the value of environmental review in well drilling and construction. So again, we respectfully urge you to hold this measure, and otherwise I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Brian Miyamoto from Hawaii Farm Bureau.
New chairs Gabbard, Illinois, chairs Kushar, Keith Algaran, Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We'll stand on our written testimony in support for mostly small farmers, particularly for this measure.
Okay, and that's all the approved speakers we have. Are any questions for our testifiers?
Senator Revere has a question.
Yes, Senator Revere.
Thank you. Kaleo, is there, or Ryan from Seaworm? Kaleo or Ryan, either. What is the process now? Is it possible to get an exemption or an expedited review? What is the status now when somebody applies for a well? Is it always a EIS, or what are the potential choices?
Thanks, Senator, for the question. Let me try and see if I can answer, and then Ryan can add to my response. But the normal process, if a well permit is submitted to us, in our review, if it triggers any of the state land, state funds, or county funds, for example, an environmental assessment would be required. And then the agency administering that project would have to, if it is exemptable under its exemption list, could apply for an exemption. So that process is available to agencies, but usually that's done through that agency's exemption process. I hope that answers your question. So for example, in this case, I would say Department of Ag would be able to request an exemption from preparing of an environmental assessment if that was part of their exemption list, or if they made that declaration per the statute itself.
So there is a process for them to create an exemption process, the kind of a programmatic exemption. Is that how that would work? They would say, you know, in these circumstances, we would likely find a Fonzie situation.
The exemption, if all agencies have an exemption list that it submits for concurrence with the Environmental Council. So there's a process to, I wouldn't call it programmatic, it's just an exemption list. That once concurred with by the Environmental Council becomes part of the agency's exemption projects that are, or that are exempt from preparing of environmental assessment. So there is a process to get projects like this or others through an exemption, and then that list would basically be available for the agency to use.
Okay, thank you. And if there was no oversight, or if someone was just exempt from the process, would there be a potential that they could draw too much water that would affect aquifers or otherwise affect the environment? How would we, in other words, how would you see a moderating effect of that if they weren't having to go through that process?
Thanks, Senator. I'll again start, and I think Ryan can add to this. The normal well construction and pump installation permits have, in the application, there's specific requirements of how to specifically design the well to meet our well construction standards. So those standards are engineering standards that do ensure protection of the water resources in the construction and development of that well. The other secondary and or cumulative kind of impacts of well development are usually disclosed, for example, in state projects when you do an environmental assessment. So there's two layers of potential protection in that process. But in general, our well standards do and are designed to help prevent and mitigate any potential impacts.
But the cumulative impact might be missed if we're not looking at it.
So the well standards don't explicitly, for example, consider impact to traditional customary practices or impact to nearshore resources or groundwater dependent ecosystems. So those would be considered as part of an environmental review process, the social, cultural, environmental, collective impact, secondary and cumulative impacts. But the well standards themselves protect against the actual well development.
Thank
Ryan,
you.
do you want to add anything? Sorry, I just want to make
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, thank you. I should clarify that whenever anyone drills a well and submits a well completion report to us, we do require a pump test, and we analyze the pump test to see if there are any potential impacts. And we don't permit any pump that shows that there are excessive impacts. So Kaleo's right. We don't specifically address things like traditional and customary Hawaiian practices or nearshore environments in the well standards in and of itself, but we make sure that the pump test shows that there are no adverse impacts to any resources.
Thank you.
I
Thank you,
have
Chair.
a question. Then Kaleo, so what happens? Okay, we're talking about ag lands now. Yeah, we're not talking about any other lands. We're talking about food production. So what happens to lands, ag lands existing that already have wells that has been dated? And I'll give examples to my colleagues as well. When the sugar plantations closed, there were many attempts after by state government to continue to revive the use of the lands going forward, and also worked on with USGS. And I can attest to that because in the district of North Kohala, my district, that was impacted real bad because they had no other economic viability. It was just sugar plantations with a rather large communities. So anyway, having said that, so USGS, USGS did drill wells, and I think it's beyond North Kohala and some other communities, and probably in other islands as well. So it's an existing well, and then it's not a new construction. And so going forward, so if we want to open up those lands, and they are also identified on government lands, there are some that are owned on private lands in the district as well. And so if those that's already in agriculture, like a particular couple that I do know, company that already is in macadamia nuts, that's on private land, and they want to make use of to increase their capacity on agriculture, growing other foods as well, aside from macadamia, and they want to use the well, it's already constructed. So if we change language to also not only looking at, it seems like this bill is for construction, but what about well improvements on lands that Department of Ag could use?
Yeah, thank you, Senator Inouye. I think that maybe clarifying that would help this bill potentially.
Yeah, because there's no language about, so maybe if we add, well improvements, because it's already existing wells, yeah. And I think you guys know, the history of the state, so I'm sure there's wells all over the place.
Yeah, Senator. So I think, for example, improvements to existing wells or pump replacements, etc. Those are small minor modifications and probably fall under some of the exemption classes within the current statute. But again, that's the applicant or the agency's kuleana to file that exemption.
Okay. Sorry, sorry, Kaleo. I have to. It's a technical thing that's come up. We have a minute, Senator Gabbard. Otherwise, the bills die. So we need to call a recess. So we got to decide probably to defer these items for next week.
Well,
I think we can just do it now instead of going into recess.
well, on this one, I would just, I needed more time on this one anyway.
Okay.
If it's all right, we'd like to defer the decision-making on this one until, let's see. Is that all right? Yes.
Chair, I just had a question. So if we defer decision-making, are we not able to question testifiers anymore?
I think
Because
it
have
has
a
to
lot of
continue. I think it just have to continue if you can make the announcement that the continuation of this agenda includes all the items though. Because Senator Gabbard, I don't think we have time to even go into recess and do a vote.
Okay.
And I think like Senator Ocasio has questions as well. So I think the recommendation would be that we need to defer these measures for next week. Am I correct, Carol? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so that's what we'll do. We'll defer them to Monday of next week at our time at 1 o'clock. That would be January 30th at 1 p.m. in room 225.
And those items, Senator, you'll have to identify.
The items would be, let's see,
SB 2062.
2062, SB 2064, and SB 2065.
Okay, yes, I think we got it clarified. And for the Committee on Water
Madam
Land.
Chair, I think Sunday is the 30th.
Monday the 31st.
I
The
think
31st.
Oh, I'm
Monday,
sorry.
what?
Thank you, Kurt. Yeah. Monday, the 31st.
What about our committee? It's okay. Okay, okay. For the Committee on Water Land as well, we'll continue the hearing. And for the committee, it will, I think it's 1:30, did you say, Senator?
Well, actually, I already have a hearing notice at 1 o'clock.
Okay, that'll do. We'll agree as of now.
Okay, great.
Oh, okay, your staff is saying 1:30 p.m.
1:30 p.m.
Yes. Okay, it's fine with Waterland as well.
Great. All right. Thank you very much.
Waterland will be in. Okay, since we'll be on Zoom, Waterland committees will be at 1:30 in room 229, and that would be Monday, January 31st.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, folks.
Thank
This
you.
is, we've learned with the Zoom meetings, we'll have to be on time. Thanks, folks. for the
Aloha.
help
Thank you.
Today. Okay, this adjourns Committee on Water and Land and Agriculture and the Environment.